Hey guys! Today I'd like to talk a little bit about the art of portrait drawing, and while I do that, I'm going to be demonstrating by drawing a self-portrait using Prismacolor Premier colored pencils. If you are an old pro at colored pencils, you might want to look away because this is actually my first time doing a portrait in colored pencils. And I'm sure I'm about to make 1,000 naive mistakes. Although obviously I've done portraits in other mediums before, so I'm not totally new to this. I've had this idea filed away in my brain for a couple of years now that I really wanted to draw or paint a portrait with headphones on. I just thought it would look really cool. So I finally tried that out in this drawing. My first step is to establish the basic proportions. And I just like to take my time with that, and I do it all by eye. I don't like using the grid method or measuring or anything like that. I find that if I place reference lines in a drawing, they tend to show up in the finished work, and they are just really difficult to remove or hide. So instead, I just take my time and use light pressure in the initial layers so that I can make corrections as I go. And in the end, my drawings do have flaws and imperfections that, kind of reveal my hand, so to speak. But I am okay with those imperfections showing through. But if that's not you, there are tools that you can use to achieve greater accuracy. But I just don't like using them. This portrait isn't intended to glamorize me in any way, so I took the reference photo without filters or makeup, and I used natural lighting. There's nothing wrong with any of those things, by the way, but I do think it helps as an artist to preserve the shadows and details, which are sometimes lost if the photo is heavily edited. So that's something that you also want to keep in mind, for example, if you like to work off of celebrity photos. They tend to be heavily filtered and photoshopped, and it can be just a little bit harder for a beginner to see shadows and details, and most importantly, the value relationships that help create a likeness. In terms of composition, you probably noticed that I tilted the composition at an oblique angle and squared off the picture. And there are a few reasons why I did that. Compositionally, I think it creates an interesting dynamic and creates sort of an S-curve that goes through the eyes, through the hair, and out through the hand. Also, the inner corner of the right eye falls roughly on the 1/3 line. Another reason why I was interested in doing this so-called Dutch tilt is because I actually have a terrible time with the concept of self-portraits. In the past, when I attempted and failed at self-portraiture, I caught myself subconsciously trying to fix my face. Like doing this weird artistic plastic surgery on my face almost. And the end result, of course, is that it looks nothing like me when I do that. So portrait drawing really requires honesty and acceptance, and it really is your flaws that make you a unique person. So by tilting the composition, it actually forced me to focus on the details I was drawing, and not on what I wanted to see, if that makes sense. And the result was a better likeness. I have to say I actually had a really hard time finishing this drawing, and an even harder time cutting the footage together and finishing this video. So as far as I am concerned, doing a self-portrait really was a painful process. But I do think that it is something that every artist should attempt at least once, even if it is very painful to get through. I actually did consider doing another celebrity portrait, and I've done a lot of them before. You often see artists on YouTube drawing or painting celebrities, but honestly, I am just really tired of doing portraits of celebrities and of seeing portraits of celebrities. No offense to celebrities, but you guys are way overrepresented. Like I said, I've done a lot of them before, so I understand why other artists also choose to draw them, so this isn't an attack in any way. It's really hard to stand out as an artist online, and celebrities get you way more attention than this drawing will ever get me. Something else that I find that helps me is when I have a personal connection to the subject. It really helps if you can care about your subject, but if you are dealing with someone who is a stranger to you, this can be hard. So in those cases, it really helps to try to get to know your subject as best you can. That can be through talking to the person if you can, research, or biographies if you can't. Obviously, you can accurately draw someone that you don't know from a technical standpoint, like the celebrity portraits I mentioned, and they can turn out really detailed and accurate. But for me, the more that I can care about or can at least empathize with the subject, the easier the process becomes for me. Maybe this is just a unique quirk of mine, I don't know, but if you are struggling with portraits, maybe it will be helpful to you. Another thing I mentioned briefly earlier that I wanted to touch on again was this idea of noticing flaws. A common mistake that beginners make is that they're so focused on getting the eyes, for example, and everything else perfectly symmetrical that they actually miss the little asymmetries that everyone has to a greater or lesser degree. And it's really these little asymmetries that make a likeness recognizable. In my face, I have a little asymmetry between my two eyes. One is a little wider and one is a little more narrow. And my mouth is not perfectly straight. And it's not just me. You probably remember meeting someone who kind of had a charmingly lopsided smile, or someone with one eyebrow that's always quirked just a little higher than the other. So you should always be looking for these little nuances because every face has them. A lot of art instructors, when they are teaching portrait drawing, will demonstrate, for example, if they are teaching about noses, different nose types. So they will categorize them in different ways, like broad noses or narrow noses, things like that. And all those things are helpful, don't get me wrong. But it's really important to remember that those are just templates. So two people can have a similar nose type, but their noses are still unique and different. And I think that's the difference between drawing a portrait and a caricature, so to speak. By the time that I got to the shirt and the background, I was just ready to be done. So for that part, I kind of went a little looser and more abstract and wasn't trying to get super highly detailed realism. I just made a decision that I didn't want to be spending all day long drawing my shirt and the intricate pattern on it. So I know that it might be kind of hard for most of you guys to judge because I'm basically just a voice behind the camera most of the time. But I really do think that this is a decent likeness of me. Everyone I have showed this to in person instantly recognized it as me. Sitting here looking back through the footage, I can see some things that I got wrong. I've got some hard lines on the arm where I went a little too hard on the purple shadows and I wasn't able to blend them out. And I can see that my mouth looks just a tiny bit off to me. I could go back and try to fix those things, but I really don't want anything more to do with this. I'm pretty much sick of this. I don't want to look at it anymore. But I do think it's convincing enough. If you enjoyed this video, I'd love to hear from you in the comments. And if you would like to see me draw or paint more humans for a change, leave me a thumbs up so I'll know. Anyway, I hope you all enjoy the rest of your day or evening wherever you are in the world. I am wishing you all the very best. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.